All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm just gonna. Yeah. All right. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. So we are going to be in conversation with these two wonderful leaders to talk about friend-raising events, fundraising blitzes, advanced dollars, matching dollars, all of those really wonderful fundraising ideas. And I hope that you leave here today feeling good about adopting one of those methods and learning a little bit more. So today we have Pamela from Greater Chicago, and we also have Natalie from San Francisco. So we'll start just by having each of them describe their various fundraising projects, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. And Taylor is going to be walking around with the microphone so that y'all can ask your questions. I would just ask that you hold the questions until after they've both had a chance to present their projects. So without further ado, Pamela, tell us more.
Hello. Can you hear okay? Okay, what about now? Okay. All right. Oh, yeah. So again, my name is Pamela. I'm in Chicago. And the only really awkward thing about this presentation is that I did run some fundraisers over the years, and that's not what I'm going to be talking about. I'm talking about somebody else's really successful fundraiser. So I'll do the very best I can. So what this was a day of emailing. It was an email blitz to friends and family and acquaintances and enemies, asking them for funds for our candidates. And it was just a blitz. It was a one-day, all-out, everybody hands on deck. And that's what the event I'll be talking about.
Good afternoon. How's everyone feeling? Yeah, it's great to be here. Great to see you, not you, but actually see you, which is a nice change. I'm going to be talking about a program we developed at Sister District San Francisco called a house party in a box. And essentially what we wanted to do was avoid reinventing the wheel, because I think we all spend lots of time doing that constantly. And so we were looking for a way to really systematize and create a rock solid process that we could use over and over with our fundraisers.
All right, is this what? Yeah, there we go. All right, Pamela, you want to tell us about the fundraising blitz?
Yeah, so I talked to a couple of the people who were behind it. There's also Julie Burwell, who is sitting in the green sipping coffee, and maybe she'll throw in some bon mots as I leave things out. But what the organizers wanted to tell me is that really the foundation was laid in two ways. The first was having matching donors up front. We have a couple leaders on our team who have family members who have given matching donations. And so that was helpful. And then through calling of new volunteers, they found some other matching donations. So they felt like that was a really strong base to start from. The other most important thing they talked about was setting a date. And the date needed to be something where everybody was available. The important people on the team who do communications needed to be ready to send out the emails that were scheduled throughout the day. And then all the rest of us had to be ready to forward to friends and neighbors and really try to raise funds. So they talked about that being sort of the foundation. Should I keep going? Yep. Okay. So our communications team, we have a really strong communications team. Julie is one of those communications people. They, in advance, wrote the 5 emails that were going to go out from the day before to the day of to the day after. And those were all ready to go and queued up. Same with social marketing. Our social marketing person is here. She's fairly amazing. She's in another session right now, but if anyone wants to talk social marketing, we were kind of like, we've heard of Instagram, but no, not what it is. And so she has taken that and really run with it. So all of those messages were also queued up. just so you know the total. So the total raised was 16,500. So that was the total. Yeah. The matching donations that had been lined up, that was 7,500. And one of the things that I was suggested that I call out is, we did get a lot of new members during the Dobbs decision. And we have a Google form where people can fill out, we give them options of things they'd like to do. One is, I'm willing to give a matching donation. And so volunteers on our team called those people and said, hey, you said you do this, and they did. So it was great to have new people that way who were giving money. Then 9,000 came in the day of, but a third of that came in the day after. And so one of the lessons learned was send something the day after and tell people they can keep sending money, that it's okay, we won't turn you away. So that's a full third of funds came in the day after the actual Blitz itself. And that was really, that was the crux of it. I think one of the things we talked about on the call was previously, the year before, we had reference codes for social media and for, for what came in through emails and this and that. And the decision was this last year not to do that it was really a lot of trouble to kind of track all that. It didn't seem worth it in the end. And that money coming in was money coming in. And we were going to do all the things anyway to make sure that we captured people, no matter through what platform. Yeah.
All right, Natalie.
Is this working? Great. Okay. So the core thinking behind House Party in a Box for our San Francisco chapter was we felt like anytime folks got together, we wanted to give people the opportunity to take some sort of an action. So sometimes that action was volunteering and sometimes that action was donating. But the really important thing is if someone was going to organize any kind of happening where people were together, that there would be that opportunity to do something. So for house parties, we found that, we constantly had these conversations. Okay, you want to do a house party? What are you concerned about? What are your questions? What are your, sort of anxieties? And so we sort of addressed all those things in this House Party in a Box. And we also provided a bunch of ideas because that's where people sort of stumbled. They felt like, well, I know how to do a party, but how do I do a fundraising party? So the idea was to give them all these resources and let them pick from it. But on the back end, what we found was really helpful was having kind of a concierge relationship with the house party hosts. So in other words, we had folks that had already done house parties and we paired them up with people that hadn't done house parties so that they felt like, oh, here's someone who's got a similar experience to me. So when we think about the house party, we break it into three parts. What needs to happen before you have the house party, what needs to happen at the house party, and then importantly, and echoing what Pamela said about that follow-up after the Blitz, what happens after the house party. And I think that's something that people kind of like sort of forget is like all this energy goes into having the party and then you walk away from it. But in fact, after the party is a really critical time to do follow-up and outreach. So a couple things that we, work with our volunteers on is recognizing that early money is so important. We created a fundraising committee, and essentially as a group, we host a house party host party. Say that 6 times fast. House party, host party, house party, host party. So the idea is that all the people that hosted a house party the last cycle, we invite them to a party just to thank them, right? That's a really important thing because they went ahead and did this effort, but then ask them to bring a friend. And that way we're expanding the idea of who can host a future party. And of course, we invite other volunteers to come to that. And it's usually held at one of the hosts from the prior year. So they open up their home and they go, hey, I did a party like this. And it worked out great. And you guys are all here at a party. This is what it feels like. And again, because everyone's together, that's the opportunity to ask who here would like to host a party, right? So we don't wait for them to leave and follow up. We get them to raise their hand in the moment. The really powerful thing is because we've invited the past hosts to that party, they all raised their hand. Like no one who's had a party is like, oh my God, I'm never doing that again. Everyone's always like, yeah, that was great. That was super easy. Sure, I'll do it again. So now all the people that haven't done it are looking around and going, oh, wow, lots of people are raising their hand. Maybe I should raise my hand too. That peer pressure, positive peer pressure. So number one, make sure that you have a party to thank the people that have been doing this for you and to bring in new folks. Then for the new folks, because once people have hosted a party, they don't really need the hand holding anymore, but they can pair up with new folks. Give them the steps in a very detailed way so they don't feel overwhelmed, right? Let them know exactly what's going to happen and be there on a schedule that makes sense. Well, the two things I would say that are really important about a house party. Number one, the invitations, follow up on them at least 3 times before the event. It seems like a little thing, but if you get an invite once, it goes into your mailbox, you may or may not look at it. And then all of a sudden the party's arrived and you're like, oh gosh, I didn't put it on my calendar. So as a host, follow up at least 3 times with the invitation if they haven't RSVP'd. Like obviously if they've RSVP'd, you don't need to keep haranguing them. But even with the follow-up, if they've said yes, thank them and encourage them to donate before they get to the party. And the reason why is because it'll help you get towards your goal. But often when they get to the party and they actually are around other people and get to meet the candidate, if that's what happens at your party, they'll give again. So I would encourage getting the first ask early before they come. If folks RSVP and say no, sorry to miss you, you can donate right before the party. And then if they don't respond, that's where those 3 follow-ups are really important leading up to the party. Then after the party, for the folks that showed up, thank them profusely right away. Don't wait. Send them personal thank yous. That's so important. These are your friends. These are your family, neighbors. So number one, thank the people that donated first. Number 2, folks that didn't show up, didn't RSVP, guess what? Hit them one more time after the party and say, we had a great party. We're so sorry you missed it, but you can still be part of the momentum. Show them how much you raised and set a new goal if you exceeded it. But if you didn't hit your goal, this is the way to say, I know you couldn't come, but we're only $200 away, right? Giving something that tangible for people that couldn't be part of the initial event is really important. And then also for folks that were there that didn't donate, which rarely happens, but every once in a while it might happen. That's another way to communicate with them. So those are just like really simple things we encourage the host to do because they don't naturally do that. They naturally send out the invitation once, see the people at the party, and then maybe might thank them, right? So we want to make sure that that happens on a super consistent basis. And the last thing I'll say is when we do our house party efforts, we know that some hosts are uncomfortable making the ask. Is anyone here uncomfortable making an ask? A couple of people. All right. If you're uncomfortable, it's okay. It really is okay. You can find someone who is comfortable because I guarantee you there will be one person who likes to make the ask. And we provide that as part of our fundraising committee. We always have one of our volunteers go and do the ask. But again, a lot of times we find that the hosts, once they're in the moment, they're willing to do the ask, but we're there as a backstop in case it's needed.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So we're going to open it up for Q&A, but I'm going to kick us off with a question of, do you have an estimate of how much your house parties raised this past year?
Excellent question. And I'm sorry I didn't cover it. So on average, every house party has somewhere in San Francisco, somewhere between 10 and 40 people is kind of the range of a house party, obviously dependent on the size and location. But typically, the house parties are about $2,000 to $3,000 is what they raise. On the higher end, we've had house parties raise as much as $8,000. On the low end, like $1,000, right? But even with 10 people, $1,000 is a pretty average amount because again, it's not the 10 people at the party, they're going to donate, but it's all those other folks that couldn't come to the party.
Thank you so much. All right. Anybody have any questions? All right. We have Taylor and Sean walking around with microphones.
So at the house party, do you have entertainment? Do you have a speaker? So people just hanging out?
Catherine's like, I'm not sure about this whole idea. So we have one of four things happen at a house party. One, we're lucky enough that a candidate is actually there in person, or, through COVID, they were there on Zoom. And by the way, I count Zoom house parties as house parties because you're inviting a select group of people, and you could be doing something in the background, specific to them. It's a candidate. It's a person that, locally that might be of interest for people to hear from, or it's the host. So there's not usually entertainment. If there's entertainment, we usually do that as a bigger citywide event versus asking an individual host to do that type of thing. So we've had a comedy show, but that was in a bar. We've had a theater performance, but that was at a venue, that type of thing.
Yeah. Hey, Natalie. I was going to ask you about when you would start doing this host party. I guess you start after you have a candidate announced.
No, we actually do the host party host party as early in the year as possible, letting people know the primary is coming, a candidate will be selected, but we're asking you to, raise your hand now to set the schedule for the parties, because we want to do that as soon as we can. So we don't wait until we have the candidates to make the ask of our volunteers to be a host.
Okay, but the first host party, not the party for the host.
Yes.
But the first host party is once you have a candidate.
Correct.
Okay,
correct.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm interested. The email blitz that you did you get new members out of it as well as dollars?
That's really funny that you asked that, because I had this conversation with the two main people who ran it, and Lauren Long, if anyone's ever talked to her, is very straightforward. And she said, there was one goal with this. It was to raise money. We did a bang up job. She did not use the words bang up. We did a bang up job raising money. But no, it went to that we know of. No new people necessarily came in through that. Where the new people came in was definitely through Dobbs, probably like all of you, and getting those people on that, those emails that we probably got new money out of the newer people is probably what happened.
Yeah. And in our conversation, I think one of the interesting things was during our conversation, we discussed sort of utilizing those moments whenever we do get really big influxes of people. I know there were certain lists that had more than a couple hundred people added within a short couple of weeks. And so I really loved that y'all took the initiative to reach out to all of those folks and connect them in the ways that they wanted to be connected. So maybe they wanted to phone bank, maybe they wanted to give some matching dollars, maybe they wanted to attend the fundraisers, that sort of thing. But using that moment was so vital.
Hi. I have so many different questions here. This is great. It stimulates a lot of thinking. One of them is house parties with COVID and I'm still wearing a mask because I know people who are still coming down with COVID. So, what we've decided to do is that we can only do stuff outside. Is that true for other folks, or are they doing things inside or just doing things on Zoom?
That's a great question. And our focus with our volunteers is to meet them where they're at. So as a chapter, we don't say, this is how house parties work. We say, we just want you to reach out to your network. What makes sense for you? So for some folks that meant we're doing a party, but in my backyard. For some folks that meant we're doing a party, but everyone has to show me their, proof of vaccination, and masks are required. So whatever the hosts want to do, that's going to work. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like there's a lot of Zoom fatigue out there. So that's certainly an option, but most folks are not interested at this point in our chapter in doing Zoom only events. But certainly if the host said, in my community, that's what makes sense, we would be like, fantastic. That's great. Whatever works for you.
So I had one other question, and that's about the Blitz. Was that just done once? And I didn't catch how much it actually made.
Yes, so it was done once, but it's done once in a year. And this one was significantly more successful than the previous one. And it was also done much earlier. It was done in August, which people thought that may have contributed. But the total was 16,500.
16,000. Okay. Because I was thinking about, the giving circles, which are so successful, similar, not quite the same, but similar to what you're talking about, which are done on a regular basis. But maybe because this is a blitz and it's very specific. So, okay, thank you.
This is why I'm never on panels. I have a question just about cadence. I know we talked a lot in the Chicago team about when in the year it was going to happen, when we'd all be available. But for something like the party in a box, is it something where, as you're thinking about the full life cycle of your events for the year, do these take preeminence where it's like you get these scheduled and these are these kind of foundational benchmark events, and then your team is planning other events around those? I think one of the things we worry about is oversaturation, where everyone has these really fun ideas, but then you've got events every week. So you start getting fewer people at each event. So how do you factor in your larger team events versus the host events and kind of making sure that they're all successful?
That's a great point. Volunteer fatigue is totally real. So in terms of a chapter, we usually have 4 events we do as a chapter. So we have 2 kickoff events, or I shouldn't say 2. We have a kickoff event for each candidate. We usually have 2 candidates. In the past, we've had a few more, but let's just say we have 1 kickoff event citywide for each candidate. We typically have an election watch event, and then we typically have an annual celebration event, towards the end of the year. So for us, that's the main thing we're doing as a chapter. Then we let the hosts essentially pick a date that's, going to work for their schedule. And it doesn't matter, because the goal is not to keep hitting the same core volunteers, but for them to reach out to their community that's not volunteering, that's not part of Sister District. The one thing I will say as a caveat is, because the power of meeting a candidate, and you've seen Deb and Lorena, they're rock stars, right? You get excited knowing that's the real human being that I'm going to help get elected to make change in the world. So we do coordinate with HQ to try to have what we call kickoff weekends. And then once we have that date locked in, we try to ask the hosts to have their party on that weekend. And, for us, it could be as many as 3 parties in a single day, 6 parties over a weekend. So, we have a kickoff, and then Saturday, it's like brunch, midday, early evening parties, all back to back. And we're really trying to get the hosts to just sign up at the beginning of the year to say, I will do a party. And then we're constantly communicating with them to see if they can be part of that kickoff weekend, or if they just do it at some other time that makes sense for them, knowing they might not get the candidate in person. But because we've got Zoom now, even when they're doing parties that aren't on the kickoff weekend, the candidate can Zoom in. So there is that connection between the volunteers, donors, and the candidate. But yeah, so we don't worry about it conflicting too much with our events on a chapter basis, because those are pretty finite, and we really want it to work for the hosts.
Yes. Oh, hi, I'm Peggy with the Sacramento team. And we did a blitz this past year that was highly successful, very similar to what Chicago did. Probably smaller results, though. One of the questions I had, though, was about, we had a couple of advance or matching donors in the 4-figure area, and but it's always wondered whether these are people who would donate that same amount anyway. Do you feel like your advance donors were additional to what would have been donated in other events or in other arenas, or Or was it really money that came to your event that, would additional to what would have been raised otherwise?
It's more about the motivation for other people to donate, to say, we can unlock this money if we raise this much. So in fact, there was some money in reserve for the matching funds. And it looked like I think it was that we looked like we were going to actually meet our match. And so they changed the email that went out and said, oh my goodness, we just unlocked new funds. Some magical person called us and said, I want more people to send in money. So I don't know what it is about wanting to having a benchmark out there, but I mean, given NPR does it, it's got to be something that works and is motivating.
Okay. Peggy and I, my name's Yvonne. Peggy and I worked on the Blitz last year. And one of the things we did was announce how much money had been raised or how much more money we had to go. So someone always had to be looking at Slack or Team Dashboard. Did you say that you did the same or did you not? Because you said you wrote up 5 emails ahead of time.
Yes. So there were 5 emails that were sent out over the course, day before, day of, day after. The Jim Harper, who is the man who accesses all the data about our funds, said that it was difficult to in real time get that feedback about the money. And he said that is one thing that is frustrating, throwing that out into the world. He said that it would be really nice if there was a quick way to get access so that that could be reported back and added to those emails as they went out. It doesn't seem, what do you know, Julie? So we made sure we're all free that day. I think it was around best estimates coming in. It was, I'm trying to find in my notes, NAC is a thing. Was the thing. And so whatever replaced NAC, I think was better.
I will just let everybody know that special announcement from me. The Periscope is your team dashboard is the platform that your team dashboard is based on. And that is all real time now. So you should be able to see it pretty easily. We kind of refreshed and pulled the guts out and replaced it without telling anyone, hoping that no one would notice, and no one has, which is great because it was that seamless. So that should be solved for this year, hopefully. Yeah.
So my understanding is that because it's still not real time, Periscope is not real time, and it's updated twice a day.
It is real time.
So, because as of Wednesday, when we did PA, it wasn't real time that night.
You have to hit the refresh.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. We'll agree to disagree. Because somebody else, and I forget who it was, told me that it's going to be updated twice a day.
One thing updates twice a day.
Right.
Button, and it will.
Oh, you have to find your organizing man. Okay. Now we're on the same page. Okay, so the process is, if you are doing an event and you want real-time updates, you let your organizing manager know that during this period of time, you will need real-time updates, and then they will hopefully be available, because course, a lot of our events are at times when you all are not working
Oh, no,
officially.
anytime.
But okay, all right, you all heard
I
that,
can't
staff. You're
confirm.
gonna have to work anytime we say.
Wait, did you miss a single event last year?
I think I might have missed a couple if I was on vacation.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
vacations are allowed. We don't want people burning out. So we should contact our organizing manager and say, we're having a fundraiser 2 to 5 Pacific time this Saturday, you know, coming up. Can you staff that? And then our organizing manager will say, yes, I can, or no, I can't, but I will find someone who can so that you can have real-time updates during that 3
Yeah.
to 4 hours.
Yeah, if I can't make it, I'll send Nicole. If Nicole can't make it, she'll send Susan. One of
Okay.
us will make.
Okay, so that was the
available.
piece that we were missing, was like that we had to let the organizing, that we can't do it ourselves. Yeah.
Is it not possible on Periscope to actually just have real time all the time? Don't have to make a request? Just
We have requested that feature from Periscope,
for years.
but it is not in
Yeah.
our ability to develop
Got it.
code for them.
So you have to do extra work.
In their roadmap, but that's out of our.
So what is NAC? What's the status of NAC? Are you going to actually drop it? Oh, no.
So nice. Once we're able to get all the features, and Sarah, Liv, and our tech people have worked so hard and tirelessly to make this the best system possible. So
Okay.
give it some time. We're all going to love it.
No, it's definitely improved. I see that it's improved. So these emails you're talking about that you're sending out, do you do them on Action Network or are these private emails?
No, they're through Action. Well, they're both. So the leadership team, you know, the team of us that have kind of stepped up and are trying to make good things happen. We were already with our friends and we'd been given emails in advance, but then also, Julie, right, you were sending them out at certain times during the day through Action Network. So it went to our whole list as well as kind of like to our own personal people.
So the blitz that you did was to your whole list through Action Network. And then the follow-ups and all that also through Action Network.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And we were all sending, you know, forwarding those to our friends.
On your own personal.
On our own.
Oh, okay. How about you, Natalie? Is everything done through Action Network?
Nope. The house parties are all done through personal networks.
Right.
The only time we use Action Network is for the citywide events that we're hosting through, you know, for the volunteers specifically. So everything else is done personally. And so people use Evite or they use paperless posts. Some people just send an email with a BCC list. So again, we let the hosts determine that. And we also have found that a lot of hosts are like, you're not going to hit them up later, are you? You're not going to like automatically dump them in a list. And we've been very respectful of that. And we don't just arbitrarily add folks to the sister district lists.
Right.
Because host has specifically said, I'm not going to do this if that's the next step.
Although HQ adds them if they're donors. They know that. Probably. Yeah.
And I will also say, in addition to sending Action Network emails for the fundraising blitzes, most teams, including Greater Chicago, send out text messages through Hustle as well. So I believe it was twice a day.
Well, so that's in my notes too. So Nicole had, is it interns? Yeah, Nicole at HQ had her interns doing some texting throughout the day, which I heard was very, very helpful.
It's me again. Hi. So we did a while back, pre-pandemic, like a kind of book club in a box where it was kind of, if you want to host a book, if you have a book club, why don't we, you know, weaponize it for good? And we have like a Google Doc so that we could just kind of share out to the hosts. Here's your, I don't know, weapons. Do you have, I don't know, like a Google Doc or a wiki or something that you would perhaps be willing to share with everyone that has kind of party in a box,
Leif, as your consummate advocate, has already twisted my arm and forced me into giving up these, you know, long kept secrets. So no, yeah, we'll definitely have the resources that you can reuse, and that's part of the follow-up.
Yeah, I'm taking all of the notes from this session, as well as all of the relevant emails and text examples, and the house party in a box. I'm putting all of that in a Google Drive folder so that folks can have access to that information as you need it.
Yeah, I think the only thing is, it's a template that worked for us. Make sure that you go through it and go, this template doesn't make sense for us in these places, so we're going to change it out. But we found it to be very effective to sort of make sure that all these things are done and done in a sequence and done in the time they need to be done. Otherwise, things start to fall apart pretty quickly. So house parties are just parties. It's really the ask that's the only thing that's out of people's like normal expectation. And if you can say, you don't need to do the ask, we have a volunteer that will do the ask for you, people are generally going to say, yeah, sure. Why wouldn't I have a bunch of my friends over for a party, right? I don't have to do the ask. So. So there are usually 3 speaking parts at a house party if it's the one with the candidates in person. We have someone, the host usually does the here's sister district, because here's why I'm volunteering. Here's why I'm doing the house party. For them to give that personal narrative, we find is the most powerful. Then there's the candidate talking about why they should be supported if they're there in person. And then there's the person making the ask. Now, mind you, it could be one person doing all 3. It could be 2 doing 3 roles, splitting it up, or it could be 3. So it really, again, depends on what makes sense for the host.
Can I ask a question quickly? Can you either model or speak to the conversations that you may have had prior to your email blitz, right? So there are probably folks that you teed up, your friends that you have talked about Sister District. Can you either model or speak to some of those conversations that you had with your personal networks, basically highlighting, hey, look, this email's coming, I'm going to need you to give?
Oh no, I just sent the email. Pretty much anyone who's spent 6 minutes with me it knows what I'm interested in, what I do, and that Sister District is a really important part of my life. So I just send stuff. Like for our book club chat, people talk about all sorts of things. The only thing I put in book club chat is about Sister District. So everybody knows. Yeah. It's why I don't get invited anywhere, which is a problem.
Any additional questions?
What new fundraising tactics are you going to use in Virginia or with Virginia candidates this cycle?
Oh, can I tell you? Okay. So I have a partner in crime. I have a friend, and we were chatting, and I was like, let's have a book sale. And why I picked her to do this with is that I knew she would take it over and do it 6,000 times better than I could. That is exactly what happened. It was gorgeous. I can show you photos if you want later. So I called her and I said, hey, I feel like we should start talking about our next fundraiser. And she said, we could do the book sale again. She said, no, I want to do something different. So I think we're going to do a progressive dinner or lunch, and we're going to have different people host and bring in their own networks. So we'll see how it goes. I guess she's run a bunch of these before, so it'll be our fundraiser, but it won't be. But she actually just joined the leadership team, so maybe she'll be here next year to, the Chicago area leadership team. But yeah, that's what we've been talking about, progressive dinner. Sigh. Not as much as I had hoped, but I can tell you the big mistake that we made. I undercharged. So we made about $2,000, and what we did is we had people donate books. We happen to live in a community and seem to, probably all of you, where everybody's a reader and buys hardcover books. I had thousands of books in my house. I live in a little bungalow. Thousands that then my daughter and I divided up into category, history, humor, things like that, fiction, nonfiction. So a lot of books. And then what would happen is we charged, people made a donation to get into the book sale, and then they could take as many books as they wanted. We also had, like light snacks and drinks. And the ticket price was significantly too low. So if we did that again, I would raise it much higher. It was an incredible value. And then people were worried about taking too many books. I'm like, you can't take too many books. Like, it's impossible to take too many books. But anyway, so it made about $2,000. I feel like it should have made more, and it would have if I had just upped the donation. I think it was $40, $35 or $40. I didn't ask at the event. We had QR codes set up, and what happened too was, because of that problem where you sign up for something, but then you have to go someplace else to make the donation. Even though I followed up with people afterward, I know there was confusion about that. I had people who swore to me they made a donation, like looking at the names of people that had donated, and I know they're not there. So maybe they donated someplace else. But yeah. Yes. Well, I mean, there was a donation. Yes.
The door. And then there was also, you were actually selling the books, or they were
no, they
taking
took
the books.
We couldn't sell anything there.
Thank you.
Yeah, they walked in, and then everything was free.
Yeah.
So I have a question. I know you had mentioned that you try to get the host party in as early as possible. Have you already done that for San Francisco?
So our fundraising committee is meeting on March 6th. And out of that first kickoff meeting for our committee, we'll set the host party. Maybe need a new name for it. But yeah, so it's usually in April. We find like a nice spring party, and then, and then we start to schedule the other events following that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else about house parties that's worth kind of pointing out. We have a schedule for them. In other words, the actual party time, we don't just sort of like leave it as, oh, at some point you'll do an ask, right? So we are very sort of specific about, okay, everybody comes, they're welcome, blah, blah, blah. 45 minutes in, if it's a 2-hour party, this is when we gather folks. We have X amount of time for the SDP overview, this amount of time for the candidate portion. If the candidate's there in person, a Q&A portion, because we definitely think that's important. And then the ask. And at a party, we almost always do an update as close as we can to say, here's how close we are, for people to donate. So there is a schedule for the party as well. Just, we don't leave it to chance.
And how many hosts did you have this past year?
I'll be honest, we had fewer hosts this year fewer hosts in 2022 than in any, year historically up to this point. So we had 7, but still, raised over $25,000. So again, I would say most of them are folks that have hosted before. It's like so easy for them to do it. And it's almost become like a tradition, like, hey, it's that time, I'm going to have my candidate party. And, they bring friends from all over because for us here in this room, we spend a lot of time and resources, sometimes not as much as we should, on Sister District, but for other people, it's a blip. It literally happens once a year if it happens at all. So it really is important to sort of let folks re-engage their community that way, because so many things are distracting them, and to have this one opportunity to talk about the importance of state races and talk about these candidates once a year is not a big ask of a volunteer. It's a party once a year. It could be a picnic outdoors. You know, it could be an event. If you've got lots of folks that are parents, do something with the kids. Go to a putt-putt golf place, right? It doesn't matter as long as you have an opportunity for people to connect their community with the program.
Excellent. We have time, I think, for one more question.
Just a quick question about the house party. So I imagine that most of the times you're not getting the actual candidate to the home, right? So you're doing it via Zoom. And then just technically, logistically, how's that working with the interaction between the participants and the candidate?
So as an example, one of the people in San Francisco that's been doing the parties on an annual basis, essentially, she happens to be a classically trained viola player. And so she does a Baroque concert every year in her house. She sets up chairs and, you know, has about 30 or 40, this is one of the larger events, 30 or 40 people that come. So what she does is she has the musical performance first, and then says, okay, now that you've all listened to the music, I'd like to tell you about Sister District, a little short bit there. Usually a volunteer does it. And then, because she doesn't like the speaking part. And then we have a Zoom for the candidate. I don't think she's had a Zoom for the candidate every single time. Like sometimes the volunteer just talks about the candidate. So again, it's, you know, when you ask your friends to come to your party to donate, they're doing it for you. They're not doing it for this random candidate in some other state that they may or may not have any interest in. And that's the power that we have as individuals. It's our connection. We're just leveraging it for a specific outcome. So, you know, don't feel all the pressure of like, oh, I got to know everything about Sister District. I got to know everything about the candidate. People don't care. They won't retain it. They're just there because you're their friend, right? So that's all that matters.
All right. Thank you all so much. And can we get a hand for Pamela and Natalie? All right. Thank you all. Some folks are coming back.